Replayability is something that has been talked about a lot in modern gaming. There are many videos out there on the subject, and some really encapsulate the feeling and need to why we fundamentally play video games. To have fun. But do I even enjoy playing video games anymore? Do you? Replayability in games is a charade, a mask, a cover-up. It lies like a bandage over a wound that isn't going to fully heal, covering a void where a game you fully enjoyed and appreciated and maybe even fell in love with sat. We replay games to try and recreate that same sensation of wow. The more you play it, the bigger that void grows and the further away that wow becomes. However, does any of this matter? Does it make sense? Is it just the ramblings of a madman that gets sad when his monkeys don't pop the balloons? Well, yeah. And no. Video games are the most complex art form in the world. They can make you feel happy and euphoric, but also sad and desperate. They can fill you with insurmountable joy and also crushing rage. A game can inspire people to live out their dreams and try and change the world. I've played a lot of games over the years, and very few I fell in love with, and even fewer that I return to and replay. I've slowly lost touch with narrative-driven experiences. But why is this, when some of my favourite games are the likes of The Witcher 3 and Bioshock, games heavily focused on narrative experiences, but then I will feel completely uninterested by other narrative experiences? I feel the reason behind this ties into another video I have made: expectations. As an audience and a consumer, you have a certain level of expectations in a game, and sometimes those expectations can blow well beyond the measures and capabilities of what a developer is ever going to deliver. The more you play a genre, the greater your affinity towards it grows. It's natural. The games you play within that genre meet your needs and your expectations, and anything that deviates from that formula can feel like a disappointment. Souls-like games outside the From Software Hotel of Excellence often don't meet that grandeur, wonder or sheer beauty the From Software games possess, even games that try to adapt the formula. And that is definitely a poor trait most gamers have. They judge too harshly and too quickly. Their expectations are at a certain level, and when a game doesn't meet it, it's hard for that game to make an impact on the person who plays it. I'm guilty of this all the time. Platformers I compare to Hollow Knight and Shovel Knight, fantasy action RPGs I compare to Dark Souls, but it's hard sometimes. You want to find those similarities. You want to play those games that are similar to your favourites because you want to try and capture that similar experience again. You want to capture that same feeling of when you got your first victory royale or when you killed your first boss. And again, this is natural because why wouldn't you? Those feelings and emotions you'll carry all the way through your gaming life. Another major issue is gamers latch onto memories they already have. Nostalgia is one of the most powerful but dangerous emotions we feel. It can twist and distort your memory of a game and get you believing that what you remember is nothing close to what the actual experience offers. A game that you remember looking and playing like this actually looks and plays like this. It can then be challenging to revisit those games, as you will quickly ruin the memories you had playing the game and the experience in general. I replayed Shadow of the Colossus, one of my favourite games ever made by the way, on the PS2 a few years back, and I remember sitting there thinking,
that is one big pile of shit.
However, I also feel like this issue can be very subjective. I know there are people out there who will collect retro consoles and play retro games all the time. Emulators are a great way that people may combat this, but sometimes nostalgia for a game isn't just about the game. It can be about times when you were younger and things were easier. It can be about your old school and friends you had back then, or an old home, or anything that ties an experience with a game to something that happened in your real life. This is one of gaming's key pillars: escapism and relief, a way of remembering and also forgetting. Sometimes being nostalgic for the things you no longer have can be taxing on a person. This is something I will always adore about remakes and remasters. A new, fresh look at a game that you hold so close to your heart. A way of re-experiencing a moment that you've already lived and played through, but in a new style, with better graphics, sound design, mechanics. All these things can make you experience all those emotions again. It can tap into that perfect little nut of nostalgia. I've been playing video games for what feels like my entire life at this point. I'm still very much in love with the idea of playing a game, sitting down, a few cans of Pepsi, and starting a brand new Souls run, building a new factory, conquering Europe, but that feeling quickly dissipates, and there are very few titles that can hold my interest for longer than a few hours now. But why? Why does something I love so much feel so dull and uninteresting? It can't all be down to expectations and missing the good old days. What's the underlying reason? Honestly, I think the reason is based a lot around replayability. I mean, even games like Minecraft. How many times can you explore a limitless world before the limitless possibilities feel limited? How many times can you guide a band of rogues off an ever-evolving planet? And this is tough, and I feel for people who struggle with this, as it can be difficult to shake this issue. Finding something you love becomes so stale, it can be mentally draining. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, these issues rarely leaves them, and usually grows to the point where playing a game is as painful as getting up for work in the morning. This brings me onto my main point though. How do you combat this? What are the best ways to make games and gaming in general fun again? There are 3 different ways that, over the last 6 months or so, I've been using to help me with this problem. Number 1. Try a different hobby. Playing games was all I did during my downtime, for hours and even days on end when I had time off work. But I began doing other things during that downtime. I play sports at least twice a week. I go for runs. I've started reading books again and tried my hand at creative writing. I've started programming again, enough to keep me entertained for a couple hours. And this means that because of the other activities I do now, there are some days where I don't play games at all. And what that also means is when I do sit down and play a game, I've started thoroughly enjoying that experience again. Number 2, mix up what you play. If you're a person who only plays the same types of games, it's natural and rather obvious that at some point you're going to hit a brick wall. So, before you hit that brick wall, try your hand at another genre. I wasn't a huge fan of tower defense games, but then I picked up Bloons TD6 and They Are Billions on Steam. And they are both games that I will revisit at least a couple of times a month now, even after beating them. I'm not saying you're going to fall in love with every new game you pick up, but it might give you the refreshment you need to start enjoying the games you usually play again. Number 3. Mess about with the games you already have. Mods, texture packs, reskins, campaigns, custom game modes, an experience that feels completely different to the one originally designed by the developers. The first time I played Daughters of Ash, which is basically a mod which rewires Dark Souls, I was amazed. A game where previously I knew the map like the back of my hand, pick-up locations for weapons and armour, shortcuts around the world, had all been rearranged. It felt so refreshing that once I had finished it, I started the game from scratch in its vanilla state, and straight away, that spark was back. I fell in love with the game all over again. Mods like these have fundamentally saved gaming for me. Games I have played for hundreds of hours, I will continue to sink more time into because any time the experience becomes stale, I can rely on the community to reignite that flame again and again. Anything can be as replayable as you want. Games are all about vision and relief and escapism, a world to go to where you can shape your life. Mess around with the physics, try a new challenge, speedrun, no deaths, try a new hero or new weapon, drop on a part of the map you have never gone to before. This, for me, is what gaming is all about. That experience of being lost and unaware. And that's why I keep coming back. Don't get me wrong, if I could experience Dark Souls for the first time again, I would. If I could forget how The Witcher 3 ends or escape the planet all for the first time, I would. However, every experience I have with a game now shapes what I want in the future, what I will play, and how I view things around me. I like to think in another 10 years I'll be whinging about something else, but I'll still find those brief snippets where I sit down and enjoy a game for what it is. A game.